lost somebody. Not something, but somebody. I don't mean death. I'm not going to go there. Okay. But more like you had them at one moment, like a child, an elderly relative. Yes. Okay.
I took my sister's children, my nephew, and to the park, and I said it was all of those gated once. Stay here. And there were 3 of them. And next thing I couldn't find my nephew. I was in such a panic because it reached his park. And then I looked as he was wearing his jacket. I saw him, he was walking, going down another direction. I didn't even care about the others. I just ran, grabbed him, and I spanked him and I was crying because he was crying. So I panicked, seriously, because I just thought, to lose someone else's child, what would I say?
What would you say?
I lost my son in Black Rock. It's a big rock. But we told them before, if you get separated, come back to the cafe. We spent about an hour and a half looking for him. And it was already dark. And we went back past the cafe to the car, and he's standing there. And he says, "Where have you been?" He said, "You told me if we separated, come back to the car, the cafe." He did the same in the supermarket. He put an announcement over the intercom. And my name's Daniel. I'm not lost, but my parents are.
That's right. Lost my parents. Excellent. Anybody else? Just before you, Leon?
A couple of years ago, there was a big event in a local park. It was a picnic. I mean, there was, a couple of thousand people in the park. And I took Alice and William down to the park, and at this stage Alice was still in a pushchair. And I turned around to get strapped in, having a few problems. Turned around, and William had completely disappeared. I mean, not just, I couldn't see him, he'd gone completely. And I just stood at the top of the hill, shouting, at the top of my lungs, trying to find. Fortunately, one of our friends, Ejeshan, saw I'd seen him, heard me shouting, and kind of brought him back. But he'd gone to a place where he likes going in the park. But I didn't know about, because I hadn't been enough to the park at that time to know where his favourite place was.
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's just a frightening thing. Do we ever lose children?
We lost Lydia at a bonfire party in Manchester, and she found a policewoman. We eventually found her, and we also lost Lydia in Victoria Station ladies' toilets. She moved out of the toilets onto the forecourt. I'll tell you, all the parents die young.
That's astonishing. None of us have actually lost them permanently at this point. We got them all back. I mean, it's interesting as we talk about that those memories come back, and the feelings come back. And even if those of us who may not have lost a child, we can connect with those feelings that other people have felt as they've lost someone who really matters. It's feeling of desperation. So the thing we're going to talk about today is, how does God feel about when he loses somebody? We know how we feel. How does God feel, and what gets in the way of those who are far from God coming to him? And in fact, might we be the problem sometimes? Because in the story, let's have a look at the story, then we'll talk about it. Let's have a look in Luke 15, verse 1. Read here. Luke 15, verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbours together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." It's a very powerful parable, this. And we've got a thread going through Luke 15 we'll be talking about next week and the week after. We look at Next time, the lost coin, and the following time, the lost sons, plural, I think. But we'll come to that in a couple of weeks. Lost and found is a theme through here. And this culminates in what Jesus says in Luke 19:10 when he says the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. And then goes from there to the cross so that the lost can be saved and found. So here we have Jesus with the Pharisees, and as usual, they are not understanding what he's getting at. They're not understanding what he's all about. He's there with tax collectors and sinners, and the religious people don't like that. The tax collectors and sinners, the rejects of society, the people that others think are not worthy of God, they are drawn to Jesus. A big lesson there, I think. For me, perhaps for all of us. The people who are furthest from God are attracted to Jesus. There's something about that we should be like that, right? Somehow we've got to find a way to be attractive to the least religious, the least spiritual, the furthest from God, however we might define that. So they don't like what Jesus is doing. They, of course, view the tax collectors as traitors to the nation. That's kind of working with the Romans, that's what it would be. The sinners are those who don't keep the law, and in fact probably not just don't keep it, they're the ones who are actually not even bothered about it. In fact, maybe even deliberately break the law and the customs. And the Pharisees would see those people as holding back the coming of the kingdom, because for the Pharisees, the righteous keeping of the law, keeping all the commandments, was the way to bring the kingdom in. They were thinking, if we could just get Israel to behave itself and get rid of the Romans, then, once we're all following the law, Messiah will come and the kingdom will come and David's kingdom will come back, and then we'll be able to keep the Romans out and have a good time. So that was their idea. And so they see Jesus as working against this. Ironically, of course, they're the ones working against the kingdom. He says the kingdom is like this, a place where everybody is welcome, even the ones who seem like they shouldn't be here. So Jesus is shocking them by his behaviour. And although it wouldn't perhaps compute for us, he's also shocking them by the type of parable he tells here. Because if you're going to pick a hero, it's funny, isn't it? Because Jesus often picked a hero for his stories that you wouldn't normally pick. Like a dishonest manager. I mean, a dishonest manager was one of his heroes of one of his parables, right? And then a Samaritan, of course, which we know. But here he picks a shepherd. And a Pharisee would never pick a shepherd to be a hero of a story. The shepherds were thought of as being dishonest people. They were the people out there in the countryside. You couldn't keep an eye on them. They were unclean most of the time. And they didn't come back into the village or the town or to the temple at the right times for the festivals. They were out there on the countryside. They were thought to be brigands and thieves, most of them, stealing each other's sheep and doing dark and nefarious business out there where no one could spot them behind a rock. So they were that kind of, the Pharisees had that kind of view of them. They were unclean, unreliable, and in fact they weren't allowed to give testimony in court. So if a crime was observed by a shepherd, they wouldn't let them in, what's your profession? Shepherd. Sorry, you can't give testimony. I mean, that was as far as it went. So Jesus uses them as the hero. Why? Why does Jesus choose a shepherd to be a hero? Well, maybe it's because of these passages. Isaiah 40, talking about God. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those who have young. A vision of God from Isaiah and Ezekiel. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. Enemies of Israel might have scattered the sheep. In some ways, the leaders of Israel may have scattered the sheep or caused the scattering of sheep, but God says, I want to bring them back. It seems like the Pharisees had forgotten this image of God and indeed of Messiah. Jesus, of course, sees himself as the shepherd of the sheep, John chapter 10, which is a story for another time. So, there are also heroes, aren't there? I mean, David was a shepherd, great hero. Moses was a shepherd, great hero of Israel. And, of course, in Luke's Gospel, we see the shepherds being the ones that the angels come and sing to when the baby Jesus is born. And the angels come, and who do they come and sing to? This heavenly chorus, the heavenly choir, riven open and torn open, and this beautiful music pouring down from the heavenly host. It's not to Herod, it's not to the Pharisees, it's not at the temple, it's on the hillsides to a group of shepherds. The last people you might expect, except when you think about passages like this. So this image of the shepherd is very important. So we're going to look at a few things today. First of all, the nature of sheep is that they do get lost. It's just the nature of sheep. I mean, if they are not shepherded, they will stray, they will wander off. That's just kind of what they do, isn't it? And it is the nature of small children. In fact, they do sort of wander off. They smell something, they see something, and they've got this innate curiosity. I'm not sure that sheep have an innate curiosity. I think they just have very short attention spans, and if they see something tasty, they're off. Right? They do have a herding kind of instinct on one level, but on another level they can be quite independent. So they tend to wander off. The shepherd here notices that one is gone. He has 99, there's 100, he counts them. Every night you would count them, that's what you would do. You count all the sheep, and you would know them by name if it was a flock that size. 100 was a fairly average sized flock, probably meant there was more than one owner invested in this flock. It could be the amalgamation of several flocks, very likely a family thing where one family you're connected to has got another few sheep, and then you've got 1 or 2 or 3 shepherds looking after them all. This shepherd's probably not on his own. A flock that size would probably have 2 or even 3 shepherds. He might have been the senior one, and left the other 2 looking after the 99. So the one goes off because that's what sheep do. How do people today, how did we, let's think about this, stray from God? Like, what are the things that distract us or take us away from thinking about or understanding or responding to God? What sorts of things in life take us away from God? What would we say?
Material things.
Material things? Okay. Yeah. What causes?
Television.
TV, right. Entertainment. Stubbornness. Sheep can be pretty stubborn. Yes. Stubbornness, good word. What else? Sin in general, just generally. Okay.
Curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity, looking for new experiences or trying to find out things. Yeah. I'm sorry? Pain, okay. Pain can take us away, yes. Wondering if...
Search for money. Search for money, livelihood.
Searching for other things that seem more important, at least at that point. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Loss and blame.
Blame?
Yes. You lose somebody you love and tend to say...
Blaming God. It could be connected with the pain. Penny mentioned that, maybe that, where are you, God? Why have you allowed this? And that kind of fear or doubt or hopelessness or, various things there. I think, excuse me, the times of my life, especially when I was much younger and I wasn't thinking a lot about God, I was seeking mostly security and pleasure. That's maybe different people, different things maybe, but I wanted to achieve some things that I felt would give me an identity and security that would mean I wouldn't have to depend upon others and be fearful about my future. And I wanted pleasure. There was a lot of pain in life, but I thought the best way to deal with that was to get as much pleasure as possible, mostly in a glass, a brown liquid. So that we stray. People stray for different reasons. They get distracted, tempted, and stubbornness. I mean, perhaps you could say the sheep disobeyed the shepherd. Certainly, he probably knew where he was meant to be on some level. Maybe he didn't trust the shepherd. Sometimes pain can lead us to not trust God. Of course, God suffered as much pain as us, if not more. But that's another, we've got to come to understand that. There are consequences to being lost. What are the consequences to the sheep of being separated from the 99? Consequences. Danger. Right. Open country. There are wild animals out there who would eat the sheep. What else is a possible consequence of being separated like the sheep? Dangerous consequences. Loneliness? Well, the sheep feel lonely or not. I don't know. But we're looking at a metaphor. We're looking at a metaphor here. Okay. Alright, so, loneliness. Okay. Yeah. Separated from the flock.
Stolen.
Could get stolen. Okay. somebody else comes along and takes the sheep, and
Could end up in somebody's super bowl.
could end up in somebody's cooking pot. Yes, steaming away. Mutton stew. Excellent. Or not. Okay. Yeah. Loneliness, hunger. I mean, it may stray to an area where there is no food. It may think there's some food, right? Hunger, thirst. And problems with its coat, right? Because they need to be shorn. Thank you. I was going to say sheared.
I think that works.
Does that work? Okay. It needs to be sheared and or shorn regularly, right? Or else it gets so much coat that it can't move. There was a sheep in Australia that got lost, and they found it 4 years later. I don't know how it survived, and it was so heavy it actually couldn't move. And it was found by someone who was driving along and saw it on the side of the road, and it was basically on its side, and it just couldn't get back up because it was so heavy. With this thing, and they found all kinds of weird stuff inside the fleece when they got it off. It was 45 kilograms. It's not the world record actually, but it was. I mean, can you imagine carrying that stuff around? So you get burdened, and I think that's a metaphor there. When we get separated from God, we get burdened. We get burdened by the stuff that we could give to God, the anxieties and the fears and all that kind of stuff. We get burdened, we get hungry, we get thirsty. There's lots of different metaphors there. So that's what's happening to the sheep. And if we don't get it sorted out, ultimately it costs us our life, spiritual life, and our lives. And we don't know when that is. That's the thing about being urgent. The shepherd, I think, is urgent but patient. And we'll talk more about his patience in a minute. But he is urgent. He goes to search for it as soon as he notices it's missing. And I think that's something for you and I, that we should be urgent about our caring for people who are lost. It doesn't mean we're panicked. Panic is not the same as urgent. But there's an urgency. That's a focus, a seriousness. Because we don't know when the end will come for us, so we can't reach out anymore, or the people we're reaching out to, when that may come. Now, I do a thing which I think is a bit weird. I'll have to confess to you, which is that I have an alert set up on Google something or other, for notification when my name comes up in the press. And this is the thing. So I don't even remember why I set this up or when. It was a long time ago, and I get an email about once a week in case Malcolm Cox comes up in the news, and it sends me a little link to a news article. And there's a Malcolm Cox who's a senator in the United States. And so I get notifications about him in the news. And there's another Malcolm Cox who's some kind of famous yachtsman. And so whenever he's in the news for sailing his yacht, I get an email. And never, in all the years I've had this alert set up, has anything come about me. Until this morning. As I was finishing my lesson, almost the last thing that happened before I left the house was I took my emails, and there was my name. No, it wasn't really about me, no. But it was about a different Malcolm. But it wasn't about the yachtsman, and it wasn't about the senator, and it wasn't about anybody else, but it was a different Malcolm Cox I'd never heard of. But it really shook me up as I read it, actually. I want to read this thing to you. No, actually it's a bit serious, joking apart. Andover murder probe update. This is Andover in the UK. Second person arrested following death of Malcolm Cox. And I just read that, it just really for a moment freaked me out. Anyway, somebody with my name was murdered. He was 84 years old, and he lived in Andover, in Hampshire. And they've arrested a 38-year-old woman, and then they've arrested another man, a 71-year-old man, on Friday, just this last Friday. So this chap called Malcolm Cox, who lived in Bell Road in Andover, was killed. He was found with a laceration at the back of his head at his property, and he was taken to hospital, but he died at hospital. And there was a picture of tributes and flowers outside his house. And, I don't know the whole story and all that, but it just, for a moment, oh gosh, And maybe there won't be a headline the day I die. Or maybe it won't be the same circumstances as this Malcolm Cox. But it just remind me, that we don't know when the end is, and the end will come. For us, some people reaching out to. So, the shepherd is urgent about finding the sheep, though it is indeed very lost, and probably is lost because of its own stupid sheepy fault, right? So, nonetheless, he goes to look for the sheep. And let's talk about the shepherd a little bit here. He looks for the sheep. Now, again, in contemporary Jewish thought, the idea that people might seek God was fine, but the idea that God would go and find sinners, that was a weird thought. They can come to him, but he wouldn't go to them. So here we've got Jesus saying, no, God is not like that. God goes to look for the sinners, if you like. So he leaves the 99 probably with some friends. Off he goes, and let's see, what does it cost him? What does it cost the shepherd to go and look for these, for this naughty sheep? What does it actually cost him? He's off searching for the sheep. Time. Okay, his time. Energy. Okay, climbing around. I mean, these, this is out in the country. So this is not strolling around on flat pavements of Watford or something.
He could lose more sheep. He could lose more.
He could lose more. Yeah, there's some danger of that. Some livelihood lost, perhaps. What else would it
He
cost
should
him?
have been resting then because he's finished phase 1. He's out again. So
Right, I mean, he's probably already pretty tired.
It could be attacked by wild animals.
He himself could be attacked. He puts himself in danger here. Yeah, that's right. Wild animals. It costs him quite a lot, I think.
Bit of a risk.
Stress.
Maybe a waste of time.
Stress.
Stress, I mean, there's, when you feel that sense of, gotta find this thing, you feel pretty stressed. I took Charlotte and Bronwyn to the airport yesterday as they were flying out, and we were driving up in the car. And because you know what it's like when you're going away, especially if you're going away like them for 3 weeks, you've got to make sure you've got everything you need, right? So they got all the bags in the back, rafts in the back. I'm driving along, and we're somewhere. Where are we? We're on the N25 on the way, and then suddenly Charlotte says to Bronwyn, "Did you pack the credit cards?" And Bronwyn says, "What credit cards?" Charlotte, like, but the credit cards, the cards that were in my wallet, but then no, they were in your wallet. But then, and then they had this exchange of, no, we've got the post office thing where we can get cash from that. We don't need the, yes, but we'll need this. And there was a brief. It was brief, and it resolved well. But there was a little bit of tension there between the front seat and the back seat, whether the cards were actually packed or not. And then Bronwyn said, "Oh, I've got my debit card," and I could see Charles go, like this. Oh, it's going to be okay. And there are those moments of stress when I hope we can find that thing. So this is the cost to the shepherd. And what about bringing the sheep back after he finds it? What about the cost there?
Only by right telling off.
The sheep's going to get it.
Yeah.
Naughty sheep. Yes.
Getting it back.
Getting it back. So what's the cost of getting it back?
Well, you'd have to carry it as it was. So
Carrying, yeah.
somehow get it back. It depends how big it is. Might be a big one, 45 kg. Might not be able to do that, so you have to walk it back.
Okay.
That looks very civilized and romantic.
Yeah. I have to say, although I like these pictures, that sheep looks far too clean to me. The sheep I've known, and the whole thing looks too clean and neat. And that's rather small sheep. The sheep generally will be quite a bit bigger than that, and mucky and dusty and dirty and everything else, right? We've got Oscar staying with us while Charlotte and Robin are away. Penny took Oscar for a walk this morning, and let's say when Oscar left this morning, the dog, he was mostly sort of creamy white. When he came back, he was mostly mud brown, and I would not wish to pick him up and carry him anywhere. These sheep were very heavy. They're about 45 kilos themselves, even if they're fully shorn. So it's a heavy thing. I mean, this is, I don't know if you've carried any, I wonder what the heaviest thing is you've ever carried. I'm not quite sure. It's probably some big bag, some big suitcase or something. But I mean, did you say your wife? Be careful around here.
Children are sick and they're big.
Oh,
That's not good.
you're larger when your children are bigger and they're sick. And they flop. You know that floppy way they go, where if they're kind of rigid, they're okay, but when they flop, or when they're asleep, you try, oh gosh, and then you do your back in. Gosh, that's right. They fall asleep. Getting them out of the car when they're asleep. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is a lot of effort, isn't it? It's a lot of energy, it's time, it's risk, it's danger. But this is God. This is God. This is God risking everything for us. It's God saying, I know I'm going to be rejected by a lot of people. I mean, Jesus got rejected by almost everybody. He ended up being persecuted. He ended up on the cross. God knows where that ends. And frankly, followers of Jesus, more often than not, perhaps that's our experience. Our effort doesn't seem to be rewarded or doesn't seem to help anybody out. So we care about people who are needy, or we care about those who are lost, and we do our best to reach out and to be a nice person and to forgive our enemies, and it doesn't seem to produce much. But it's not about that, it's about the heart, isn't it? I think this is what we see in this parable. And people need to be reassured. They need to be reassured by our consistent love, not just when it's easy. Love really means something when its heart's right, doesn't it? We, last week, where are we now? Not this last week, the week before, Penny and I had a few days holiday, and we went for a walk one day. We drove up to Chorleywood. On the way there, we got in a little traffic jam mini thing, and we got hit from behind. We were at the front of a shunt. So a fella drove into the car behind us, which was pushed into ours, and we got a big bump, and the bumper of Penny's car was very badly damaged. And so we stopped, and everybody stopped, of course, and we got out and had a look, and we were okay, and we could feel it, but we were all right. And the chap behind us was really shaken up, and the person who'd hit him were okay. So we then pulled off around the corner, off the Chorleywood Road, and waited for the other two cars. It took some time to come round, but then they were drivable, so they drove around. And then we had a bit of a conference between us, the chap behind us, and the chap who'd hit him. It was called Jack, I think? Yeah, Jack. Young fella, 23 years old. And he'd hit a minicab driver called Shatif, and then he bumped into us. So we had a chat, we exchanged some details, checked the cars out. Dr. Penny checked them out, made sure they were okay. And they were both really shocked. I mean, they were really in shock, weren't they? The chap behind us he was shaking and everything. And the young fella who'd hit us, everybody from behind, tall, swimming coach, lovely looking young fella. And but he was really shaken up. And he was, I'm sorry, is everybody okay? And he was really, really shaken. And he started to cry. And he was crying, and Penny was then into mother mode. Like, it's okay, don't worry, we're all right, And then we got back in the cars because he didn't have his insurance details with him, but he lived nearby. So we all got in cars and drove in convoy, followed him back to his house. And then we waited outside, and he came out with his insurance details. We got those, and it all got sorted out. But then he started to cry again. I'm really sorry. I don't know what I was doing. I didn't realise. My ABS didn't work. And he started crying. And then Penny gave him a hug. And I thought, now here you are. She's the victim here. We're the victims. He's the one that caused the problem. And he's the one getting the hug. And I think that's a bit like with us and God. We're the ones that caused all the problems. We're the ones that made Jesus go to the cross. And God's like, it's okay, I'll give you a hug. I'm not going to hold it against you. Just come to me in repentance. We just say at the end here, the one does repent. But it's that change of heart, change of mind. I'm coming to you, God. We've all been there, right? We've felt that. We've known that moment. God wants us to experience that. But he wants us to remember what that's like so that we can offer it to other people. That's the nature of the shepherd. One story, and then maybe we'll just finish off, and then Oge's going to do her testimony again. Last Sunday, some of us were down in Harrow, had a good time seeing old friends and all that, and it was fun. after the service, Bode, most of us know Bode. Bode came up to me with someone with him, an older West Indian gentleman. And I hadn't met him before, and Bode came up and he said, I want to introduce you to this gentleman. I said, lovely to see you. I didn't know who he was. He said his name is Joseph. I said, oh, excellent. I said, good to meet you, Joseph. I'm Malcolm. He said, fine, thank you. And then Bode said, but that's not actually his first name. And I said, oh, okay, so that's his surname. So what's his first name? And he told me, and his first name is Hayward. And I said, oh, very nice to meet you, Hayward. Hayward Joseph. And Bode said, yes, he became a Christian fairly recently, just a few months ago or something. I said, oh, lovely. He said, do you know who I am? And I said, well, no, I just met you. And then Bode said, Hayward is Grace Joseph's ex-husband. And I did a double take. Now, most of us here will know Grace Joseph. We've known Grace, I don't know, 80 something. It might even be 30 years. Right? We've known Grace about 30 years, and she's always been a single mum, separated or divorced. I'm not quite divorced. Yes, divorced. Okay. I've never met her ex-husband, never known anything about him. And 30 years, right? And she's raised Christine and all that on her own, and fostered boys, and as many of us would know, and done all of that on her own. And then there's her ex-husband in front of me, a baptized disciple. I said, and I didn't know what to say. I've never, 30 years. I really didn't know what to say. And I said, well, congratulations, excellent, fantastic. How did this happen? And I said, was it difficult for you coming to church where grace is, and the kind of reconciliation stuff, was that hard? He said, I was nervous, he said, but the truth is, the day I walked in, I felt so loved by everybody here that I thought it's going to be okay. He was a bit nervous, He's Grace, he's divorced from 30 odd years ago. She's had to do all this work on her own for all these years. And he doesn't know how the people in church are going to handle him. But he said, I felt so loved, felt so welcomed. I just really felt loved. He felt that hug. He felt like the shepherd had picked him up, I think, and put him on his shoulders. And he said, I knew it was going to be okay. And it turns out that this is a message I got from Bode, giving me some background, when he says, basically, he came to church hoping to get reconciled with Grace, hoping that would work. But then as he studied the Bible, he realised, I can't come to church and become a Christian on the basis of what God will do for me. I need to get my life right with God. And so he got the conviction that knowing God is more important than whether he gets reconciled with Grace or not. And so he's now of the conviction that God is who he needs to be close to. He needs to be close to God more than close to Grace. So he made that decision. He repented. There was great rejoicing in heaven. And there he is. And now he's fully involved in church life. He comes early to set up the PA and help, stays late to pack it all up. He's 77 years old. Talk about God being patient. And this is the thing I feel about this story, where we have the urgency, but we have the patience. Because it says that he went to look for him as soon as he realised that one was lost. But he says he searched until he found the sheep. Until. That's an important word. Until. Urgency and patience. And I don't know about you, but I feel often, I really wish people I would reach out to would just repent now. Come on. I've been reaching out to you and I get frustrated, to be honest. And I sometimes give up praying for people, which I shouldn't, But maybe that's good. I've just got to be more patient. If it takes 30 years or 77 years, then okay. Right? I was so inspired, excuse me, to hear that story and to meet him, and maybe it can be an encouragement for all of us just to not give up. Keep searching until we find the sheep that God has given us to search for, and that he's certainly searching for. And then there's great rejoicing. So I'm going to finish there and ask Gogi to come up and talk about her journey with God and how God was searching for her and all of that story, because we'd love to hear what God did in your life.